Same Circle Wrestling here again, guys. We haven't had a show, and it feels like it's been a while, but it's been a little over a week, and we had an interesting week as far as wrestling goes, because this was the start of Destination Impact's two-show block with Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling. Personally, I didn't get to watch Ring of Honor because I expected it to be on demand, and it wasn't, so unfortunately I didn't get to check it out, but Tim did, so, and he wasn't very satisfied with it, so I'll pass it over to him.
I'll tell you, I started watching it, I sat down on the couch, and I flipped on Lucha just to watch the opening bit with Dario Cueto, and then I went, oh yeah, I forgot Ring of Honor's on. I can always watch Lucha on YouTube, which I usually do if I don't catch it, if I watch NXT instead. So I started watching Ring of Honor, and I got like 10 minutes in, and Jesus Christ, that's a train wreck. I mean, it's like 90s DVD quality wrestling, and they're throwing it on there, and they're like, oh yeah, we're bringing you more underground great wrestling, and it's almost like watching that episode of what's that show on Comedy Central where everyone gets high all the time?
All of them?
Yeah, every show.
No, that one with with Blake and
Workaholics.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was like watching that Workaholics episode where they did wrestling in the front yard. Like, that's the quality of what I was watching. Like, a tag team came down to start yelling at the announcer about their match later in the night, and they were like yelling across the desk, like not even with microphones.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that episode of Workaholics was pretty high quality, considering Ben Stiller was a guest star.
Yeah, that was great as their landlord guy.
So actually, that's higher quality than Ring of Honor.
Yeah, I mean, Ring of Honor, they can only bring out, the Young Bucks and Joey Styles as their star power.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it is their kickoff show on TV, but it's, I guess we'll see going down the line as far as, what they do with that. The thing about it is that...
Doo-doo.
It's... Impact doesn't have much longer on Destination America, so I don't know where any of it's really going to go. But right now, it's like... It's hard to watch 4 shows in one night, so you got to pick and choose what you want to watch the next day and what you're going to watch, right then and there.
Yeah, but like the way Ring of Honor started, it wasn't like, oh god, this is our debut show. It was like, oh yeah, this is our next episode. So you're watching like episode 27 of whatever season they're on, and it just happened to be the first one you watch on TV. So it just made absolutely no sense. Perhaps if I followed storyline better, but the way that they produce and release and distribute their matches, it's really hard to stay up to date. So it was just like getting thrown into somebody else's mess. And I think I have to do more research before I can tune in on a Wednesday and really pick up where they are. So I'm just going to stick to Lucha and NXT.
See, that's what I expected too, was, I figured I'd just be thrown into storylines that I know nothing about. So, I don't know. I'm looking forward to watching it and seeing what they do in the ring. But as far as storylines go, I'm way out of the loop. So I guess I'll see what goes down there.
Yeah, and outside of that, Impact was its basic train wreck that it normally is.
Yeah.
I mean, you get your knockouts match, you get Kurt Angle defending the title and winning. So it's pretty much all you really needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's always just essentially the same. The last couple of weeks have been. Lashley had a match with Eric Young right at the beginning of the show, but like really those are the big names that they have on Impact right now, is Lashley, Eric Young, Austin Aries, Bobby Roode, Kurt Angle. I mean, really, that's about it. And the Hardys are injured, so, and they're dragging out the Wolves and the Dirty Heels. They're doing that best of 5 thing just because I feel like they're just waiting for the Hardys to get healthy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just going to prolong their television storylines. I don't know when their next big special is, or their next like pay-per-view kind of quality show is. So I feel like we're just kind of stuck in a filler mode anyway. So it's kind of negligible what you watch.
They have a Slammiversary coming up. I don't know. I think that's in a month or something like that. But most of their shows are. I mean, they name them different things and act like there's something big, but they really aren't.
Well, it's kind of like when WWE moved to making pay-per-views, and they just started calling them In Your House because they didn't have like a real gimmick or a real storyline behind it. It's just like, oh yeah, this is In Your House 27, and it's pretty much just like another Raw that they're airing as a pay-per-view with a bunch of guys lower in the card just trying to get matches and getting paid for being on, their special.
Yeah, it's really a strange inversion from TNA's original model, because when they started out, they were pay-per-view exclusive. They were putting their shows out weekly on pay-per-view for a reduced price, I assume.
Yeah.
And now, even their pay-per-views are just weekly episodes of their TV show.
It's the struggle of the common, I guess, major wrestling promotion trying to get out to as many people as possible, like outside of the regional promotions like West Coast Wrestling and PWG. Like these guys, they want to be on TV and they want to attain some kind of level like WWE has, but they just don't have the money to bring in so many people and put on such high quality shows. Like WWE puts on 1 to 2 specials a month now. They just can't compete with that, so you end up seeing the same, filler garbage every single week.
Yeah, it's hard because you have a monster company that, like, tries to eat up all the talent, and they also have a huge budget, so they can do whatever they want, and the sad thing is that they have this much money and this much talent, and they're still not able to put out a quality product, in my opinion.
Exactly. You mostly just watch because you hope in the span of a 3-hour show you're going to see one thing that you didn't expect to have happen, like a swerve that you didn't expect. Like, we're going to hit on it later when we talk about like Kevin Owens and John Cena. I don't think we expected that kind of a match. I mean, we expected a knockout brawl of a match, but the way that Kevin Owens was able to control that match, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I think that was kind of like my swerve of the night, just thinking like, wow, that was a real brutal match for what pretty much was just a network special.
Yeah, I think that WWE has a lot of talent, and there's a lot of people that I like to watch, so really that's the reason I keep coming back. There's no way I'm coming back for the storylines. I'm coming back for, the few guys on the roster that I enjoy watching.
Yeah, and if they keep that up, that's going to put WWE in a weird spot, because you're not going to be drawing the fans that are into the mic work and the character work as much are into the wrestling. And WWE is always going to try to focus on the mic work and the character work. Yeah. So it's really going to be them digging themselves a deeper grave.
Yeah, and I think that really moves us into one of those groups that are really good at that, and we can talk about Lucha Underground from Wednesday. Which, I mean, Lucha had quite a big shoes to fill after that death match they had 2 weeks ago, where Mil Muertes pretty much killed Phoenix.
Yeah, I think, like I said on the last podcast, it's like they're really just trying to top themselves every week, and there wasn't really, like, a huge spot on this show, which is kind of, it's rare for this promotion, but I liked seeing Jack Evans win that second medallion. That was interesting because it's a little bit of storyline development, and then we saw the Trios title get defended again, and we also saw Pentagon and Sexy Star in a submission match, which
ended quite amazingly.
Yeah. Superfly interferes, and Vampiro also ends up in the ring, so they might be teasing maybe a Vampiro Pentagon Jr. match in the future.
Yeah, but then who takes the mic? Dario Cueto? Oh, yes, they're going to fight each other. Oh, yes. Keep talking so I do another line of coke.
See, I would love to see Cueto on commentary. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it would be absolute gold.
Yeah, but didn't he, like, feed the crew to his, like, brother in a cage? And, like the next week they have to go over and try to kill that one girl in the locker room?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what's going on. That storyline doesn't make any sense, but I'm sure it's, like, a little ancillary and will make sense later.
Oh, yeah. Eventually it'll come together. We'll all be like, oh.
But one of the things I really took from it is something that we hit on about Delavar on the last podcast, where I talked about how so great to have some guy come in there with, like, his character is he has all the money so he can just buy out people. And he just built up that trios team of him, Big Rick, and Cage. Especially when they had Cage attack the Mac in the locker room. Because it kind of creates a real kind of vindictive, angry, I guess, badass level to building these trios teams, so we don't think there's something thrown together, kind of like Son of Havoc and Helico and Evil East were.
Yeah, and that was really the reason I think they gave them the belts, was because if they were just thrown together, nobody really expected them to be the ones that take it. And I think it's hard at this point. You're going to have them just keep defending the trios titles and try and make the titles. First of all, you got to make a name for the titles, but you also have to build up trios teams that are going to be able to compete with those three guys. And that is tough, especially considering what Son of Havoc and Helico have done in the ring up to this point.
And Helico's got a fucking death wish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That segment with Cage taking out the Mac, I feel like that is specifically an example of what makes Lucha Underground's booking so great. Not only is it setting up that trio of Cage and Big Rick and Daivari, but it's also setting up a feud for Cage down the line. It's like multi-level storytelling that's going on here. It's booking for now and for the future. It's doing two things in one that a promotion like WWE can't even get one of those things right in the segment.
No, the only reason WWE is able to push people is because of injuries, so at least Lucha Underground, they somehow get away with building like this cryptic pyramid of storylines that somehow still make sense, even though Dario Cueto builds his matches with cardboard paper.
So, I mean, as far as Lucha goes, I thought it was good. They've definitely had better shows, but I think it was definitely good. You can't really go wrong watching this promotion. We say it every time.
Yeah. I think it's a great upstart, and I can't wait to see, like, when this season wraps up, what they're able to package into a season 2 moving forwards, because I've heard nothing but positive reviews about Lucha Underground, which is hard to say about literally any other promotion out there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk NXT, and then we'll talk Elimination Chamber.
Yeah, I mean, the match kicked off with, or NXT kicked off with Tyler Breeze taking on Adam Rose. It was good to see Adam Rose looking impressive, and maybe going back down to NXT where he's had success before is a key to kind of revitalizing his run, because Adam Rose was a great character in NXT. It went up to WWE and it just kind of flopped because he looked like a coked out Russell Brand. Mm-hmm. But I mean, at the end of the day, this was nothing more than Tyler Breeze emphasizing his heel character and, you know, showing that he can go above and beyond when he needs to, and he can still win a match convincingly.
I like Tyler Breeze, and I think we've said it before. I think Tyler Breeze is like close to being ready to be a main roster guy, but he's not going to be called up anytime soon. I think he's going to float around at the top of NXT for maybe a year or so before he does get called up. I mean, how old is Tyler Breeze right now?
27, I think. He's been in NXT for about 4 years now, but he started there, I think, a year or two after he was training in the Heart Dungeon, I think, is when he went up and became an NXT character. And then he's been Tyler Breeze for about 2 years now. So. Yeah,
it took him a while to grow into his character, and I think now he is Tyler Breeze now. I think he's really grown into it.
Yeah, and like we've said before, that's a gimmick that can go immediately onto the main roster and make sense.
Yep.
It's not a gimmick where he's got to be some kind of truck driver out in Texas or some kind of weird shit. It's like, no, he's a male model who takes selfies like half the WWE audience does. And he just goes out there and he thinks he's good looking. He's like Dolph Ziggler, or he's like The Miz. He's got that untouchable feeling, and you know what? When the chips are on the table, he can deliver a good match.
Yeah.
Yeah, deep down, it's an old school style gimmick, the classic pretty boy gimmick, really. And I mean, that's something that you'd think you'd see more of in WWE, but you really don't. But it just happens to have enough of a modern twist to it that I do think it can still be successful.
Yeah, it's the Zoolander gimmick.
Yeah, the dumb male model who just doesn't realize that nobody else is into him as much as he is.
Yeah. So after the match, we saw Eva Marie come out on the stage.
Jesus.
And the people like just rained booze on her, and she basically just announced that she's gonna start working with NXT. As far as apparently she's gonna be in the ring.
I mean, I hope her all the best, but I think she's living proof that the WWE is wrong in thinking that fans can't remember more than 3 months, because it's been pretty much a year and a half since she's had like a meaningful singles match, and nobody has forgotten like Botchamania, which is pretty much every match she's ever had.
Yeah, they sure as hell remember it, because as soon as she was on the stage, she couldn't even talk most of the time because the crowd was just tearing the shit out of her.
You can't wrestle. You can't wrestle.
Yeah, and she looked like she was borderline crying on the stage.
Yeah, I didn't feel like she was that able to improvise and try to get the crowd on her side, which, I mean, wasn't going to happen, but she could have at least handled the booze better than I thought. I was honestly a little surprised because there have been videos released of Eva Marie training down at NXT with Brian Kendrick, actually hitting a couple moves in training, looking impressive. And I thought she might get a little bit more warm of a reaction than she did, but it just didn't happen. I don't expect it to. I'm not sure it should happen until she's really shown that she's capable of stringing those moves that she's learned together into creating a coherent match, which I'm not sure is ever going to happen, honestly.
First of all, it's the Brian Kendrick.
Fact.
I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting. Like, if she can come back from what the grave that she's dug herself, I think it'll be impressive. And but at the same time, it's like NXT at this point. They have such a strong women's roster that they don't need it. And maybe eventually when they do call up some of these women from the NXT division, they're going to need somebody to fill the spot. So maybe they are looking at her to do that. So really only time's going to tell us what she can do in the ring.
Yeah, and from that we move into Carmella and Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss wins on a bit of interference. It was good to see Carmella get a strong match, but I mean, Alexa Bliss needs to rack up those wins if she wants to climb back up the women's roster in NXT.
Yeah, I think they're both not too bad. They're both still developing. I think Alexa Bliss is going to come into her own a little bit faster. But I mean, like I said, they got to get people to step up in that women's division when they do finally pull people out of there. We also saw the Vaudevillains take another win too.
Woohoo!
And they're getting a relatively decent push as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they're out of tag team, so I mean, somebody's got to step up. And they've been a solid, serviceable tag team, so it's good to have them back in the fold.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, there's not really anybody to put them against to build them up, so that's a tough place for them. I mean, they put them in against Jason Jordan and Marcus Lewis. Yeah, so I mean, it's tough. Like I said, it is tough to build a tag team in the NXT division right now. But I mean, they're doing it the only way they can, and putting them up against these guys that are just going to job out and build them up to the point where they're going to take on Blake and Murphy.
Yeah, as far as that Jason Jordan thing goes, I mean, I think it was last week they had that backstage promo where Chad Gable tried to recruit Jason Jordan, and that's supposed to lead up to the stable that's been showing at the NXT house shows, the Shoot Nation. That's a fairly sizable stable. That's 5 or 6 guys who all have amateur wrestling experience. So if they decide to push that stable strongly, I think you're going to be seeing a lot more potential matchups in that tag division.
Mm-hmm. We also saw Finn Balor and Rhino, which was a decent match. More of building up Finn Balor as much as they really don't need to. And Rhino's pretty much there to give up his body, basically, and put these guys over.
Fun fact, Rhino is 6-6 in NXT.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
So
really not.
He's been taking some brutal losses.
Yeah, it's really not as dominant as I expected him to come back and look. I mean, it's really hard to put guys over when you don't have that strong of a winning record.
Yeah.
You're really coasting by on name value alone, which is something I hope NXT would try to avoid.
Exactly.
But they really, is the way things have panned out down there with injuries and such, you don't quite have that luxury at the moment, I guess.
But I mean, you know, the fans in NXT are more of, they're wrestling fans. They're not as much of an entertainment fan. So when you get a guy like Rhino that a lot of these wrestling fans do know, that name, it matters more to them. So, you know, I mean, I guess it works, but at a certain point you do have to give him some wins, even if it's against, you know, clowns. Like, you know, bunch
literally.
of yeah. I mean, it literally could be clowns.
I think from that, I think we should jump on to Elimination Chamber, because that was pretty much it from NXT.
Yeah.
Elimination Chamber, he opened up with Stardust beating Zack Ryder, a decent squash match, but I mean, it wasn't really a squash match, but I mean, Zack Ryder didn't really have a chance of winning it. They got to give Stardust some kind of credibility back. But I guess it was good to get both of them back on TV.
Yeah, it's bad what they've been doing to Cody Rhodes, a.k.a. Stardust.
I hope more from him, especially if they want to utilize a feud with Stephen Amell at SummerSlam. They got to make Stardust look like a worthy competitor, or else they're going to make him look like, you know, the commoner that Stephen Amell is when they have the Arrow versus Stardust match.
I mean, it's not like they don't have anything they can do with him.
No, there's plenty of spots to put him. It's just you got to make him look like he belongs there.
Yeah.
Realistically, though, I mean, there's plenty of spots for him on the roster, but just the way that character has been developed, I mean, it doesn't exactly lend itself to feuds with a lot of people on the show. I mean, it's just so out there, and realistically, it's so dependent on Goldust being there as a counterpoint to it that there's not a ton they can do with him.
Well, especially when the whole Goldust and Stardust storyline just fell off the face of the earth, never came to a head, and like never really had any sort of conclusion. I mean, we all expected a Goldust and Stardust match, kind of like passing the torch type of thing, and that never happened. It all just kind of disappeared.
Well, that happened for two reasons. For the first reason, the crowd wasn't into it when they saw it at Fastlane, and secondly, Goldust has been working injured to where he had the MRIs and he had to have the shoulder surgery. So I think Goldust has one more run coming into him, even though he said he's retired. I think he's going to come back early next year and finally retire Stardust so we can have Dashing Cody Rhodes back.
Yeah, I would buy that, definitely.
So after that, we move into Elimination Chamber tag team action, which was pretty freaking cool. I mean, a lot of it was set up spots, and it made total sense. It was the New Day against the Lucha Dragons, Tyson Kidd with Cesaro, the Primetime Players, the Ascension, and Los Matadores. So what did you guys take from this match?
It was pretty good. A lot of spots trying to put guys over, like you said. Lucha Dragons didn't look as strong as I expected them to. Kalisto had the cool spot on top of the chamber. But I mean, really none of the teams looked as strong as they should have made them look. I think the Ascension should have looked a little bit stronger. I think they did eliminate a team or two.
The Ascension eliminated the Matadores and the Lucha Dragons to kick off the show. Or to kick off the match. The problem with Kalisto climbing to the top of the ring was he did that about 2 minutes too early. Because he got to the top and he had nothing to do. He just stood there swinging for like 2 or 3 minutes until all he did was drop off.
Yeah, and even during the drop-off, it was just like bad looking because you had 3 guys in the middle of the ring standing there waiting for him to fall for like a good 4 seconds, and it just didn't look as fluid as it could have.
It looked like a yellow card mosh pit waiting for Kalisto to come down.
Yeah. I think realistically, that was the story of the match. I mean, there was some nice work, some cool spots, but a lot of it was just executed sloppily.
Yeah. So we saw the New Day retain, which I think a lot of us expected because of they came in, they showed up with the authority the week before or on SmackDown. So, not surprised that the New Day retained. They're on a decent roll right now. So,
the big takeaway from this was the primetime players being the other team available, especially when you find out about the injury to Tyson Kidd on Superstars. That's going to put Kidd and Cesaro on the shelf for about 6 or 7 months. That it's good to see the primetime players take that next step.
Yeah, they're definitely building them up, that's for sure. I think the Lucha Dragons are building their way up as well, so the tag team division's starting to grow a little bit.
Not to mention you got Rowan and Harper as well as the Meta Powers who still have to, factor in somehow.
Yeah, well, they also have to get a win that matters.
So after that, we have a Divas action where Nikki Bella takes on Paige and Naomi. It was a squash match for Naomi. She just kind of was not a factor at all. And Nikki Bella retains her title. I mean, I'm getting kind of burnt out on the Divas division. I really hope the women of NXT get to step up someday soon, but that's going to be a complete roster change in the women's division.
Yeah, it was disappointing. I mean, it's the Nikki Bella run's been going on for a while, and you build up Naomi to the point where you feel like she's a contender for the title, and then you have her just be the third body in the match in this, just because Paige comes back and she gets thrown right back into the top of the division. So really, like we said before, there's 3 people in the mix, and even Naomi now is starting to look weak again.
Yeah, realistically, I don't think I can find a single nice thing to say about this match. I mean, you had one botch where it looks like Naomi just almost kills Paige, and the rest of the match was worked sloppily. There was a mediocre Tower of Doom spot in there, which immediately followed the Tower of Doom spot from the Tag Chamber match.
Yeah.
So it didn't even look good in comparison, and honestly, there's just not a lot going for this match at all in any department.
So I think from that we move into probably what was the best match of the night. We had NXT champion Kevin Owens taking on John Cena, the U.S. title champion, in a non-title match. It was just champion versus champion. Boy, that pretty much brought the rafters down in Ohio, or no, Baltimore, wherever the hell they were.
Corpus Christi.
Yeah, they were in Texas.
So, I mean, definitely the best match on the card. It was nice and long, back and forth. Really, like, you really didn't know who was going to take this. But, they showed that they gave Kevin Owens a really good match in the sense that they made him look very strong because of what he was doing to John Cena, who's essentially a top guy in the WWE, and he always has been, really. But, just making Owens look that strong against Cena was awesome, I thought. And it's a great way to get Owens over before he does make his official jump to the main roster. We saw some awesome spots. He teased his package pile driver as well. And we were both surprised that they even allowed him to do that, because they're not going to let him do the move. So why would you tease that to fans who have seen you in the past? But I don't know how many pop-up power bombs he hit, but eventually he gets the pinfall, and
he gets the pinfall after hitting an AA on John Cena. He hit John Cena with his own move.
I don't think it was after he didn't pin him after.
No, it wasn't
the AA.
directly after, but
I think he gave him 2 AAs, and on the second one, that's what got him.
no, it was power bomb was the finish, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he won it with a pop-up, but he did hit the AA. I think it was multiple times. I don't remember. I've watched it like 3 times and I still don't remember, but that's because there were a lot of awesome spots in this. Owens went for a moonsault once in the match. A couple of cool sentons that he did. It really showed Kevin Owens' moveset, and how it was impressive because he hasn't shown a lot of these moves in NXT, so now he comes up to the main roster, has a match with Cena, which is impressive in its own, because he was only with NXT for 2 months before he won the title, and now he's got a match with Cena, a great match with Cena, and I thought it was awesome.
What I found impressive about this match was for as spot-filled as it was, there was still some very strong psychology in this match, and a lot of it was almost meta-psychology. You had Kevin Owens tease the package pile driver for fans of him from the Indies, but then you also had John Cena teasing the same sort of underwhelming finishes that have plagued his U.S. title open challenge matches. There was a lot of teasing of the typical Cena going over, more so than we've seen in a lot of his other matches, and that in particular I was quite impressed by. It was very effective, and there was a lot of points where I thought that match was over. I never saw Owens winning.
I actually wrote down a decent amount of the moves that he used that I thought were really awesome, and he used moonsault, which you missed. He used a super kick. He used an AA. He teased the package pile driver. He used a turnbuckle brainbuster. He used a senton bomb, and then he used his pop-up powerbomb. So his moveset was just awesome in this match.
Yeah, and I mean, it's amazing to remember this was just like a network special. It wasn't like an official pay-per-view. So, I mean, it was really Kevin Owens' coming out party in WWE, and I think he delivered. I think John Cena allowed him to deliver, and I think that spills right over to what we saw on Raw this past week, which was just probably one of the most demoralizing promos I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it's awesome seeing Owens on the mic because he kills it, and Cena, like, just pulling the cancer card is so John Cena.
Such a heel.
Yeah,
that was a heel move from Cena.
Yeah, it wasn't even a poorly delivered promo from Cena, but just the content of it just made you roll your eyes.
Well, I mean, you rolled your eyes, but at the same token, you knew exactly why John Cena did it. And he attacked Kevin Owens, and he battled him down in that psychology where he basically just said, you know what, you're not a true man because, you know what, your exact life motto is my life motto, so you can call it a catchphrase, but we are the same person.
Yeah, and you gotta admit that, like, Cena doing that is huge for building Owens as well. I mean, just giving them that heel heat, it's definitely helping him a lot, as if he really needed it, but...
Yeah, that's true, but at the same time, it's a little bit bewildering because when these feuds are built up like this, and when Cena cuts these kinds of promos, it really sort of pushes the story to be where if Cena's opponent doesn't win, it's like either his manhood or his skill as a wrestler is called into question, and it becomes to the point where his opponent needs the win over Cena. And it rarely comes for that second or third time. And why build it that way if you're not going to put him over?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. When John Cena came into the WWE and he was trying to make his mark, do you remember what his tagline was? It was ruthless aggression. And when you watch Kevin Owens wrestle and you watch his psychology in a match, that is exactly what Kevin Owens brings to the table. He uses his body like a weapon, like almost nobody else on the roster does. And if that doesn't show like the next era of ruthless aggression, then I don't know who else can do that.
I don't know. I just am really high on Kevin Owens. I think we all are.
The thing I didn't like about that promo is when John Cena said I was just going to give you this title, but now I don't think you're man enough to have it. It's like, what, you're just going to hand him the fucking title?
Yeah, apparently.
All right. Anyways, out of that, we had Neville against Bo Dallas, which was a 9-minute match. It wasn't anything really spectacular. I mean, you knew Neville had to beat Bo Dallas. You really hope Bo Dallas was going to get some kind of win, maybe to build up sympathy for Neville and maybe kind of give some legitimacy to Bo Dallas. But I mean, we saw Neville go over, and Bo Dallas is still looking like the chump.
Yeah, it's disgusting to me that they keep doing this. Like, don't even put Bo Dallas out there if you're going to have him do the same thing every time. And it's hard to, that last match we just talked about, it's hard to follow that, especially with these two guys. But, like, I just feel like having Bo Dallas lose all these matches is not helping him in any way. And it's not, I mean, he was a former NXT champion, so, I mean, what are you doing? I mean, this could be a decent feud if you had, Bo Dallas take one of these wins. I mean, they already feuded in NXT. You'd have that backstory. I don't know what they're doing with that.
It really is puzzling because, I mean, you got Bo Dallas, who ostensibly is lower mid-card, maybe mid-card on a good day. He's not quite jobber status. I mean, you have 2 or 3 jobbers that you can send out there if you want to just put someone over for little to no bump. And then you put Bo Dallas out there, you give him the mic, you give him time to cut promos. He does a pretty good job, he is a pretty funny character, pretty funny promos. And then you just keep sending him out there to lose over and over. It's like they're practically trying to mint a brand new jobber out of someone who could be on that mid-card tier easily. I can see where they're coming from, wanting to give Neville a win with someone over a little bit more credibility than a Zack Ryder or a Heath Slater, but having it come at the expense of someone who it at least appears you're trying to build up a little bit and who actually deserves that slight elevation, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
However, let's take a quick side here. Who's getting booked worse, Bo Dallas or Bray Wyatt?
Oh, I have to say Bray Wyatt easily.
Yeah, I gotta say Bray Wyatt too, just because he's already been legitimized once or twice or 3 times and then just gets knocked down to where he's not even... I mean, just look at Raw this week. I mean,
that easily could have been him beating Roman Reigns and earning his spot into the ladder match and then having Roman Reigns win it this week. That's how that match should have gone.
Exactly. You have Roman Reigns winning 2 matches before this, and then you decide to send Bray Wyatt out third and still lose to Roman Reigns.
I mean, that was the perfect coming out match for Bray Wyatt to get into that ladder match. Have him beat Roman Reigns. Have him get that heel heat. Have him go out there and say, yeah, I earned this spot. You might not like how I earned it, but at least I earned it, rather than half the guys in the fucking ladder match who were just there because they decided that was a cool thing to do.
Yeah. And then you got JJ Security and Kane go to interfere in the match, and you have Roman Reigns still overcome the distraction, almost no-sell it, and then just spear Bray Wyatt for the 1, 2, 3. It's like, why? It makes 0 sense to me. It's the most...
It was so demoralizing to watch.
Like, if you're gonna do this Roman Reigns thing where he wins 3 matches in a night, okay, that's okay, but you can't do it with guys like King Barrett and Bray Wyatt. I mean, Mark Henry, I accept that, but I mean, with these 2 guys that could be legitimate contenders for, their respective titles, there's no sense in this. Really,
and they're doing a disservice to Roman Reigns with the whole booking of the Money in the Bank match anyway. It's almost the same setup as the Royal Rumble, where you look at the other people in the match and it's just so obvious that Roman Reigns is most likely going to be your winner that the fans are probably going to reject it yet again.
Yeah.
There's only one way that him winning the Money in the Bank title works, and we're going to hit that at the end of the show. I promise you we're going to hit that. But you are exactly right to where Roman Reigns right now is being booked identically to how the Royal Rumble was set up. You have him overcoming the odds every single turn, and it seems almost impossible that somebody could possibly be that good. And yet we all know for a fact he's not that good.
I don't know. I don't want to talk about it anymore because it just pisses me off the way that they do it.
It's insane.
All right, so from that we have the Intercontinental Championship Elimination Chamber match.
Oh my god.
We had teased on the podcast that Bray Wyatt was going to be the 6th guy, and to this day that's still the right decision, putting Bray Wyatt in that match. But of course, who the hell comes out? Big sexual chocolate Mark Henry to take on Dolph Ziggler, King Barrett, Sheamus, R-Truth, and Ryback for the vacant Intercontinental title. I mean, that was a terrible Elimination Chamber match. That was like the worst one I think I've ever seen. And I've rewatched all of them in the past 6 months on the network, just trying, because I think that's a great gimmick when it's done correctly. But especially the end between Ryback and Sheamus, that took like 10 minutes longer than it fucking should have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was definitely an underwhelming match. But I mean, genuinely, like, 0% of the audience was psyched to see Mark Henry come out. Like, there's no... He got 0% pop. But I mean, Bray Wyatt isn't on this card at all, so why the hell would you not put him in there, even if he loses?
Yeah, at least have him show face and show that he's there to get something. Like, there's a difference between keeping a character off TV to rebuild them and keeping him off there because you just don't know what to fucking do with the guy. And I mean, look at half the guys in the group. You have Sheamus, Dolph Ziggler, R-Truth. You have guys you literally have nothing else to do with, but you put them in the match, and they have this weird problem where they think Bray Wyatt's a main eventer, so they don't have a spot in the main event for him because they're so busy with Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins and Randy Orton that they're just like, well, we can't put him in the main event, so maybe next month we'll see him at some point.
And I mean, even when Ryback wins the title, which he does, it's like, why would you not at least put Wyatt in there to help legitimize Ryback's win?
Yeah, especially after their feud at, whatever, what was it, Payback? Yeah, their match at Payback, his Battlegrounds after or Money in the Bank.
But I do think it bears mentioning that this match had so many things going against it from the moment that Rusev got injured. Just the way things played out, you could tell that the bulk of this match was to revolve around the interactions between Rusev and Dolph Ziggler. And since that got thrown out the window, they clearly had to rewrite everything on the fly. And it obviously wasn't, the rewrite was not that great to begin with. And then you have Mark Henry's pod breaking open early, which by all accounts was a botch. He wasn't supposed to be in there that early. That also disrupted the flow of the match. You can see after that happens, Dolph Ziggler is just in there directing traffic, and there's no action for a solid 30-45 seconds, which I guess was nice in a way to see Dolph Ziggler being sort of a ring general almost. It was not what I expected to see, but there was just so much of a clusterfuck going into that match, and it really suffered for it.
Well, going into the match, you knew R-Truth wasn't going to win the title. You knew whoever took over for Rusev wasn't going to win the title. You knew Ziggler wasn't going to win because he's supposedly with Rusev in that feud. King Barrett, they already gave him King of the Ring, so that's like his moniker for the next 6 to 10 months. So that way they don't have to give him anything because whenever they introduce him, he's King Barrett. And then all of a sudden, you knew it was between Sheamus and Ryback, and it was just whether or not they were going to give it to a guy who's never held gold in the WWE, or whether or not they were going to give it to Sheamus. And I think at this point, now all they have is Ryback with the title, and he's probably just going to feud with Sheamus for a couple months until Sheamus joins the Authority outright.
Yeah.
And I think it also bears mentioning, speaking of Sheamus, when they had the spot where he jammed the door to the pod to keep himself secluded for that extra couple minutes, when he finally reveals the cross, how he jammed the lock, you see commentary not only no-sell it, but take the complete mistaken point of view on it. They said he tried to pick the lock, and they just completely no-sold the idea of him jamming that pod. It was just all sorts of fucked up on every level.
Well, the same thing happened with the tag team Elimination Chamber match. I don't know if you noticed when everyone came running down to the ring, like all the tag teams, they wear their t-shirts and all their other random gimmick shit. Like, they all wore that right into the pods. So they're all getting into the pod in their clothing, and then as the match starts, they had to undress and then, like, try to fight their clothes back out through the pod into the side of the ring because they didn't think that far ahead. So, I mean, it makes sense that Sheamus would wear his fucking cross into the pod, but, I mean, you didn't see it until then, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, look, that was magically holding the chain shut. And it's like, well, thanks, asshole. So that's about all I have to say before I get angry at that match any more than I need to be.
Yeah, easily, that's a contender for the worst worked match of the year.
Yeah, it was pretty boring, I thought.
Right up there with any Divas match. So from that, we have Dean Ambrose battling Seth Rollins for the WWE World Heavyweight title. I mean, that was a decent brawling match for the most part. I mean, Noble and Mercury and Kane did their best to not fuck up this match. But, I mean, Seth Rollins showed his heel tactics, pulled the ref involved into Dean Ambrose jump off the top rope. And then Dean Ambrose hits him for a Dirty Deeds, which is probably the first time all year the Dirty Deeds has been sold correctly by fucking anybody. Seth does it, and Dean Ambrose gets like a 7 count out of it as they send the second ref down. Dean Ambrose wins the match by pinfall. I don't care how anybody wants to say this. Wins it by pinfall, and then the original ref says to the second ref that it's a disqualification. So Seth keeps the title, but Dean runs out of the arena with the title after Roman Reigns interferes. So who's our champion? Is it Dean Ambrose or Seth Rollins? Dean has the title, but Seth has the outright claim to the championship.
Well, it's really stupid that they ended it in 2 different ways, basically, because if you're going to call it a disqualification from the referee that gets hit, it should be over right then and there. Ring the bell. Otherwise, why are you sending a second ref into the ring if the match isn't going on anymore? Someone had to have sent that referee down there,
Exactly.
kayfabe-wise, you know?
Exactly, and all the refs are controlled by Vince and Triple H. So if they sent that second ref down, like, that ref's not standing there going, oh my god, my brother got hit, I gotta run out there and finish the match. Somebody has to look at him, like, whether it's a stage manager or Triple H or Vince McMahon have to say, oh no, you need to go down there, we need a referee to call this match. So the second that other ref hits the ring and does his 3 count, that match is over, sealed deal, kayfabe, over. But
Yeah.
we got a Dusty Rhodes finish. Dusty Rhodes finish. He did this in WCW for probably the last like 2 years before WWE bought them out. He would let one guy win and then call a referee disqualification or whatever you want to call it to change the outcome of the match. So that way the title doesn't change hands. And now all of a sudden you have Dean Ambrose carrying the belt. You have Seth Rollins as the champion, which carried into Raw, to which Roman Reigns had to lobby for Dean Ambrose to get a ladder match, which didn't make sense, because if Dean Ambrose is a fighting champion, why the hell is Roman Reigns doing all of his bidding on Raw?
Yeah, I think it's just, at this point, I feel like Dean Ambrose is there and they want him to be the champ, but they're trying to stretch out the feud a little bit more. And it does build some heat, but I thought that the ending was just kind of stupid, just the way they did it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it definitely built heat, and I think more importantly, it was WWE taking a free test run to see how the reaction to Dean Ambrose winning the championship would be. And on that account, that was a massive success. You got Corpus Christi, which has been dead all night, a notoriously dead crowd, and they went apeshit for the prospect of Dean Ambrose as champion, so I do think that is a great positive in the column for him becoming champion.
Yeah, Bill, you hit the nail on the head there. That was nothing more than like a test just to see, like, okay, if Dean takes the title, what happens? Does the crowd like it? Do they hate it? And the crowd just ate it the fuck up. But one of the things that I want to say got undersold until Monday Night on Raw was Seth Rollins selling the fact that he lost the title.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw the reaction gifs to that. Like, people were turning it into memes everywhere. But Seth's face of the, oh my god, my title's gone. Oh no, what just happened? That was priceless. That made the whole night for me.
Well, I think it was after they revealed that he won.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that whole, oh my god, I got away with it.
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious. He did the whole cross-eye thing, too.
Yeah. And that carried into Raw. But we need to talk about that opening segment on Raw where Seth pretty much turned down the Authority.
Oh, yeah.
Where Seth basically said he doesn't need J&J, he doesn't need Kane, he doesn't need Triple H. He can do this on his own, which is just planting the seeds for an Authority and Seth Rollins showdown.
Yeah, I think that foreshadowed quite a lot, really, with how much they've been playing up the idea of Roman Reigns being Dean Ambrose's only friend and the tension between Seth Rollins and the rest of the Authority. You might just see a double turn there. You could see corporate Roman Reigns, and then an uneasy alliance between Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins even.
Well, Bill, this circles back to what you were talking about earlier, with Roman Reigns being booked for Money in the Bank like he was for Royal Rumble. Now let's put all these seeds in motion. Let's spin the bingo turner and start churning out some SummerSlam matches. You give Dean Ambrose the title in a ladder match at Money in the Bank against Seth Rollins. Say Dean wins the title. Makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead and make Roman Reigns his number one champion or number one rival if Roman Reigns wins the Money in the Bank title. Because if you don't remember, there was an interview before WrestleMania where they asked Dean Ambrose in kayfabe, what happens if Roman Reigns wins the title? Like, he's your buddy, he's your boy, he's going to carry the title. And Dean said, you know what? If he wins the title, then I'm going to come after it. He might be my brother, but I still want that title. You can't tell me Roman Reigns isn't in that same boat. So all of a sudden, you give him the Money in the Bank title, you can start to play at that best friends falling apart feud going into SummerSlam, and you can have Roman Reigns versus Dean Ambrose being your main event match. Now you got to find something to do with Seth Rollins, right?
I'm not even sure that it won't happen quicker than that. I could see you have Roman Reigns win Money in the Bank earlier in the night, and then after Dean wins the title, or even during the match while both of them are laying prone with that ladder set up, have Roman Reigns come in, cash in the Money in the Bank that very same night, and walk out as the champion. And then you've got a good reason to go into SummerSlam with that Shield triple threat match looming.
You're forgetting one thing. The one thing you are forgetting is that they want to do that triple threat at WrestleMania. So how do you play that out? You have one guy who's aching to come back into the ring, and he has one hell of a beef with Seth Rollins.
Yeah.
You tell me that a Brock Lesnar Seth Rollins match at SummerSlam when Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns are going toe to toe. You tell me that's not your second main event, and you can call my bluff and take all my money.
It is true. Brock Lesnar is the wild card in the booking here, really.
Because Brock Lesnar wants that title, but he does not give a fuck about getting that title at SummerSlam because he knows he's a beast and he's going to get that shot down the line. He wants immediate revenge on the guy who took that title off of him, which is Seth Rollins.
And it's all speculation, but at this point, it's like you think these things are going to happen, but as far as WWE is concerned, they're gonna manage to fuck it up somehow. In my view.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, they're going to screw this up, but if you tell me those two matches were your main events at SummerSlam and you put those two storylines in effect, I mean, right there's money. I don't know what more they need to sell that show. That'd be something I would totally watch.
That's true, and that when you consider that Kane inserts himself into the Money in the Bank match as he did on SmackDown, then I guess that gives you the foil for your Roman Reigns turn to happen at Money in the Bank without Dean Ambrose being directly screwed over, so I could see that.
I think what needs to happen is we need to get a direct line to WWE Creative and send our podcast to them.
I volunteer. I'll join in. Let's go.
We'll basically just, because I mean, we could do their job better than they could.
I know, you hate to say it, but at this point, I mean, there's really no other way around it. I think a lot of people could do WWE Creative's job better than they could.
So after this podcast airs, we're going to start spamming WWE to listen to it and take a shot and try to believe in us, because we believe in the product as half-heartedly as we do. We think we can do this better.
Well, I think it all comes down to the fact that Vince is not competitive when he doesn't have competition. He doesn't care, you know, he knows he has this fan base locked in. He's got nobody he's working against. There's no WCW anymore. He doesn't have anybody to compete with and force him to do things that are out of the box. Now it's just he can decide whatever he wants, and, you know, he just expects the fans to take it as it is.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of screwy, but I mean, we take a look at the Money in the Bank card, and I mean, we got a bunch of solid matches to plan for just in the next week.
Yeah, and Money in the Bank is this coming Sunday.
1 week from today, when we're recording this podcast.
So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of time for build-up. And really, that's what kind of... It was strange to me that Raw was really just the Roman Reigns 3 matches and then a couple of other matches thrown in there to, kill some time.
You didn't see Dean Ambrose until 10:58.
And it's kind of disappointing because you got to build these matches up.
Yeah, and I mean, we look at the card right now. We got the New Day against the Primetime Players. I gotta hope that the Primetime Players take the belt off them just to give some kind of legitimacy to the tag team division.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I mean, you gotta have, like we said, you gotta build some guys up. So, if anybody's gonna take it, I think the Primetime Players have definitely. I mean, they're veterans in WWE, so it's like, they're ready to carry the belts. And I think the Lucha Dragons would be a cool feud as far as those two teams go. But then it's where do you put the New Day? And I also want to see the Ascension in that mix somewhere. So, I mean, it's tough in that division.
Yeah, and after that we got John Cena against Kevin Owens 2.0. Who do you think goes over in that one?
This one's hard. Because I want it to be Kevin Owens so bad, and... like just the way that history tends to repeat itself, John Cena is the favorite most likely in this match, just because he's always getting these rematches, and he's never gonna win or he's never gonna lose 2 clean in a row. I don't think so. I think if anything really happens in this match, it's either gonna be Cena wins, and I don't think he's gonna win clean. I think what's going to happen is maybe a Kevin Owens DQ of some sort.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's the rematch. You didn't see a lot of the type of heel work that Kevin Owens does down in NXT in their first match. And I don't think they want Kevin Owens to lose clean just yet, even if it is to John Cena. So I could see it either being a win for Cena through shenanigans, or, like you said, just a DQ. But I've given up hoping for the best in these situations, so I almost don't even want to pick. I'm already bracing for disappointment. It hurts.
Alright, yeah, I gotta agree. I think John Cena wins by some kind of weird fluke. It's something that doesn't damage Kevin Owens. But from that, we have the 7-man ladder match for Money in the Bank. We got the young phenom Adrian Neville against Dolph Ziggler, who shows his promise in ladder matches in any big spot they give him. Randy Orton, who's there because, well, it's Randy Orton. Kofi Kingston, who's there because you know he's going to do something freaking crazy. Sheamus, because why not? The day ends in Y. Why not put Sheamus in there? Insurance salesman Glenn Jacobs as Kane. And Roman Reigns. So who walks out with the Money in the Bank title? I think it's Roman Reigns, but...
Yeah, I think it's Roman Reigns as well, just the way they're building him. But I'm looking forward to the match in general, just because you got Kofi Kingston, who always does something cool. And really, that's the only reason he's in there. And then you also have Neville, who I'm sure is going to have a pretty cool spot that has to do with the ladder and a certain flipping maneuver. So, yeah, ultimately I say Roman Reigns, but I'm definitely still looking forward to the match.
Yeah, I think Roman Reigns is the obvious pick here. But I have to say, personally, my dream scenario here is that you see Kofi Kingston take the case through New Day interference, and then just the prospect of the New Day carrying on, all feeling themselves, having the case, and maybe even defending the case or wielding it through Freebird rules. All 3 men are able to fight for it and maybe even cash in. There's just a lot of possibilities there. I think it would fit with their characters very well. If it was Big E, I feel like there could be a little bit more chance of it happening just because he seems to be the more prototypical main eventer, but just the idea of that Kofi Kingston thank you run and all the possibilities they'd have for the New Day with the briefcase, that's what I personally want to see, but there's like a 0.1% chance of that happening at best. I think Roman is your prohibitive favorite here.
I think that the fact that there's so many different scenarios that can play out is the reason why nothing big is going to happen in this match.
It does seem to be the general course of things.
Yeah, and I mean, it's unfortunate, but I'm pretty sure, like, as much as we see, like, our hopeful booking with our hearts, we all kind of see where all this is going.
No way.
Yeah, and from that, we lead into the last thing we need to talk about, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, ladder match, WWE title, who walks away with that belt, and more importantly, who walks out as the champion officially rather than who walks out with the belt, because Dean Ambrose has shown that doesn't really freaking matter.
It's hard. I want Dean Ambrose to take it, but I feel like they're going to stretch it out a little more, and it's going to stay with Rollins.
I don't know, I'm starting to feel like this, it just feels like the right moment for Dean Ambrose to get his comeuppance. Seth's had a nice run with the belt. I feel like there's more storyline potential that could come from Dean Ambrose's run with the belt at this point. He obviously played up with the de facto test audience pretty well. And if our little fantasy booking here of the Dean and Roman situation going forward, of Dean with the title and Roman with the case, and considering that Seth will most likely be involved with Brock Lesnar going into SummerSlam, because if Brock's going to show up anywhere that's not Mania, it's going to be SummerSlam. I think just the sheer possibility of Brock looming means that Dean takes the title so that the title can be involved in other programs. I would not be surprised to see Dean win it here.
Well, I've said it before, too. It's like, you don't have to have one guy have this really long reign and just have the title for, so long. You can have two guys who, in kayfabe are evenly matched and have the title change hands a few times. Even if Dean takes this belt, it could go back to Seth in the near future. And, I wouldn't have any problem with that because your storyline's still compelling and the title's still changing hands. You don't have just a Seth Rollins reign. You don't have a Dean Ambrose era. It's, really it makes it so that they're both at a point where their power levels are matched to, well, I'm a Dragon Ball Z fan, so I use power levels all the time, but that is the only way I can really describe it is, Ambrose and Rollins really seem to have that same power level, and you could have the belt go back and forth as much as you want.
Yeah, and I think Dean is, as a face, I think Dean is built to chase titles more than he is to hold them.
Yeah.
So I would see that back and forth booking going on with him as the champ.
The thing that I see is, like, if Dean wins the title, you immediately tell me that this title can hotshot. As Seth, you said, and Bill, you agreed, that, having this title hotshot around once in a while isn't hurting the thing. Having it for 7 months in a row and defending it twice, that hurts having the title. Yes, if Brock Lesnar's holding the title, you prove he's the top of the mountain, but if you have Brock Lesnar battling without the title, you can prove the top of the mountain doesn't have to be in action all the time. But you need to be able to have that title be something that's attainable and something that you can grab on a Raw or a SmackDown just to elevate why we watch all these shows every single week. If you're going to tell me that the title can only change hands on 3 different pay-per-views throughout the year, I'll sell the WWE Network and I'll just start buying the pay-per-views again because we need to validate the people watching, 7 to 10 hours a week.
That's exactly what it is. It comes down to the fact that Raw and SmackDown are not as entertaining anymore because you don't have the belt changing ever unless it's on a pay-per-view, and usually it's on a big pay-per-view. And I think realistically, if you're gonna have a talent pool that's as deep as it is, and we've had this conversation before, it's like split the titles again. Even if one guy is the WWE champion and is holding that belt for a reasonable amount of time, you have a world heavyweight championship that can change hands. And we've said it so many times, they have a deep roster. There's other guys that can hold a heavyweight championship and, you know, make it matter. Especially with 2 shows a week that fans seem to be drifting away from.
Yeah, I mean, you tell me Dean Ambrose wins it at Money in the Bank and Seth finds a way to wrestle it off on Monday night, or Roman Reigns cashes in the next night. That's television I know that I need to start watching. But, I mean, I'm starting to take a back seat to watching Raw and SmackDown. I'll have it on as background noise. But, I mean, outside of having a real reason to watch, I mean, you got to get those titles moving.
Yeah, as it is right now, I stopped watching SmackDown the last, you know, couple months just because nothing happens on it. And you also, I mean, if you want to, the day after Raw, you can look up the spoilers and see what's going to happen on SmackDown, which is nothing.
Yeah, so I mean, Money in the Bank is going to hold its big opportunity to show us what they want to do moving forwards. They give that title to Dean, and I think we have some promise in what we're going to see in the next 2 months leading up to SummerSlam. So, I mean, I got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping for the best. What do you guys think?
I mean, I hope it is Dean, and I hope that they do have an exchange, you know, back and forth of as far as the title goes. You know, I would like to see it change hands a lot more, even if it's between those 2 guys, and then Roman Reigns factoring in with that briefcase at some point. But I still think it's going to be Seth Rollins that walks out with it, because of the fact that Roman Reigns is going to take the briefcase, and it's going to, you know, point towards that storyline.
Yeah, I mean, once, like we've said many times before, you have to assume just when it looks like they're starting to maybe do things right, you have to assume the worst with their booking. And so, I have to assume that every worst possible option will occur. Just because it looks like that there's so much that could go right, so many things they could finally do, that you just have to assume that absolutely nothing will happen at all, realistically.
See, for me, it's like, if you see Roman Reigns win the Money in the Bank briefcase, you can pretty much write off the fact that Ambrose is going to win the title, because I don't see 2 major events in that main storyline happening on one pay-per-view, especially if it's Money in the Bank, where it's, you know, kind of not one of the most important. I mean, the only match really that is important is the contract match. And I feel like if Reigns does take that, I think Rollins walks out with the title. But if he does not, you know, you could give it to Dean in that scenario.
Yeah, and usually you could fall back on the idea, at least not so much last year, it didn't really happen last year, but in years past, WWE has tried to set up one big long angle to run through the summer, but like I said, that didn't happen last year. You really can't even count on that being a thing. So you just have no idea where it's going to go, and usually no matter what you think, it'll be wrong because it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the build to WrestleMania last year was pretty weak, in my opinion, so they got to do something. And I think if, like I said, if Reigns does take it, it's going to stay with Rollins.
All right, my last pick is Dean, but that's our cue to wrap up.
All right, well, if you're still listening, thank you, because we do this every week and we like it, so we hope you do.
Spam it to WWE. Let's get some booking changed.
Yeah, let's get a hold of these friggin' writers. Anyway, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We'll see you next week.
Same.